Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions. I'm going to introduce my new friend to you, Patti Cook. Hello, Patti.
Hello.
I'll tell you Patti's bio, and then I'll tell you about the time we met before this. This is not our first meeting for people who don't really know each other.
There's some serendipity going on.
There is, yes. Patti brings a cross-generational, systems-level perspective to leadership and workplace culture. She has worked since the age of 14 across a wide range of industries and organizational contexts, from local initiatives to national stages, giving her firsthand insight into how power consolidates, silos form, and anxiety emerges from inside organizations. She holds a master's degree in organizational communication and currently serves as a client strategist at OC Tanner, partnering with organizations that see recognition as a driver of cultural change. Patti is a former marketing director at the Women's Leadership Institute, where she helped shape programs centered on women's leadership and organizational change. She is also an instructor at a local university, helping college seniors bridge the gap between theoretical learning and the realities of today's workforce. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So we were at a conference
Yes.
together like 2 months ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we had originally scheduled this podcast, but we had to reschedule due to a schedule conflict.
Yep.
And so we had kind of known each other over email.
Yes.
And then I think I'm waiting in line to get some soup or something. And then, and you're like, is that David Morgan? Is that you? And I'm like, oh my goodness, are you?
I'm like, I think I know you.
So we've already had a former conversation waiting in line for food.
That's
Yes.
True. That's the best place to have them.
It is a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited for this juicy conversation.
I'm very excited too. Patti told me earlier that she usually sits on this end of the microphone interviewing people for podcasts. So we'll see how this goes, right? Let's see. I'm the same way though. When I'm a guest on podcasts, I'm nervous.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I shouldn't.
Which is funny because as a podcaster, I was
right.
not as nervous.
Yeah. Anyway, well, let's talk about just in any personal experiences with mental health or close associations that kind of bring this to your interest.
Yes. Thank you for asking that question. As you said in my bio, I've been working since I was 14. So I've been through a lot of different organizations, small ones, big ones. And I have learned that it's not usually the people that need to be fixed. It's the systems that need to be fixed. And I want to clarify up front that in my remarks today, I'm talking about the mental health in the workplace, which can lead to a mental illness, right? Something diagnosable. But when we talk about mental health, for me in this context, it's burnout, quiet quitting, imposter syndrome, cognitive overload, shame, emotional exhaustion. And have I had those? Yes, probably all of them. But I'll give you a couple of examples. So for probably 2 decades in my career, I was a corporate event planner. Large scale, citywide things, small boutique executive retreats. And I had done one, and it was the logistics. Like there were lots of extra logistical things happening, but there were some new players on the scene. And the ambiguity that came from those new players being on the scene and the lack of communication, the lack of who does what, as the planner, as the designer of the event, everything rolled downhill to me. So it did cause me so much anxiety. And I remember coming home after that event. I usually love the end of an event. I'm inspired. I've met people, like we've done things. But the end of this one, I just went right into the movie theater. I didn't go home. And I watched 3 movies back to back because I didn't want anyone touching me. I didn't want anyone asking me questions. I didn't want to have to make any decisions. And I didn't want to think about anything.
You probably didn't care what movie it was.
No,
right? You're just like,
that's
I'm just
exactly
literally
right.
going to go.
I didn't even care. So by the end of it, I was like, okay, I can breathe. I've got some bandwidth. But that cognitive overload was real for me. Another one is that I had a boss who was not clear at all on her expectations. And I found that over time, I developed anxiety whenever I would give a presentation, the tone of my voice, what color was the presentation, what were my fonts, did I say the wrong thing? And I would take it home and I'd ruminate about it. And the ambiguity was really, really hard for me and affected my performance. So that's one way that anxiety has shown up for me. And then the last one I'll tell you about is imposter syndrome, because that happens to so many people, right? So I had moved back to Washington, D.C., and I was working at a company. We'd done some major projects and had lots of success. And I'd gone up to NBC in New York and gone up into their big tower, and I was applying for a job at the Olympics. And I go up there, and I'm a girl from Idaho, right? Like, what do I know? What have I done? I just put my head down and do work. And I walk into this huge office, the skyline in the background, and this lady in this huge leather swivel chair. She turns around. I sit down. She says, "I've read your resume, and you have a lot of experience. I'd like to put you in some different places than you've applied for." Instantly in my heart, I was like, no way, because she'll find out I'm a total imposter.
Yeah.
Who did she have my resume? Was she reading off my resume? But I often think about that because in my work, I've encountered so many people who have imposter syndrome. And I'd never had someone tell me, "You did really good work there. That's what this looks like. This is what we're looking for." And so when she said it to me, I had nothing to hang it on. So of course I said, no. Like, I want your lowest job, entry level, lowest pay. But I just think back to those moments and think, how different might it have been if I would have been able to claim what she saw. So those are just a few like actual examples in my life of how workplaces have stressed me out.
Imposter syndrome, just like you said, I think it's super common among people. Why do you think? What's going on that we are like chronically living beneath our potential? Or at least we think that we're beneath our potential, right? Yeah.
Yes. That is such a juicy question. I'll answer it two ways.
We promised a juicy podcast, so yeah.
First of all, I think that we are unaware of the stories we tell ourselves, and they just kind of drive us. Like if you sit down a person on the street and say, "What's your 5-year plan?" Or "Can you coherently tell me 3 minutes starting with your life? Can you sum up your life in 3 minutes? What did you claim? Is that what you wanted to claim?" I just don't think we're very aware and cognizant and claim our own voices and experiences. And then I also think that, we're biologically wired to stay the same.
Yeah.
So like in that situation at NBC, fear like just dumped into my body, and my brain was like, no, we've never been here. No, we've never done this. And so sometimes I think we equate imposter syndrome with just growth. Growth is uncomfortable. Yeah. Growth is you don't know what you're doing. You might do this wrong, right? So I think those two kind of are interweaved together of really not knowing ourselves or not being able to practice in places that are safe. And then also just fear is like new things. Yeah.
Well, and that the risk of rejection and failure is so potent for some people. And it holds a lot of people back because they're terrified of that. Just the thought of being rejected. It's like we all need to, one of the movies, not the 3 movies you watched, but we need to watch Catch Me If You Can, right? With Leo DiCaprio. It's the opposite of imposter syndrome, right?
He just does whatever.
Like that scene where he shows up at school the first day and then pretends to be the substitute teacher and just starts writing on the board. I think about that and I go, man, the confidence.
That's
to be
what
able
I was thinking.
to do that.
Wild confidence.
Literally the exact opposite, because in your situation at NBC, chances are you probably could have performed.
Totally could have done it.
Yeah, it could have done what that executive was offering you. Just because you're capable, but because you doubted yourself, you thought, well, I can't do this. It's fascinating how we just get stuck in these patterns of we're our own worst enemy most of the time.
Yes, and not just rejection, but what does the rejection mean about me?
Yeah, exactly.
What does it mean about me, right? So one of my favorite things was when I worked at the Women's Leadership Institute was there's 1,000 alumni around the state of their leadership programs. And I would often see people and observe them and notice their behaviors, their leadership potential. And then I would invite them back to speak to one of our other programs, right? Come back as an alumni and talk about it. And hands down, 99% of them would say, "I'm not an expert. I can't do this." And I said, "I actually know you can because I've seen you do it like in the wild. It's just the fact that we're putting a flashlight on it, right?" So they would come and they would do it and they'd be nervous. But when they got done, they would always say, "I can do that." That ability to practice in a space where, so what if you fail? And what is failure anyway?
Right.
You did your best because that's how you showed up and it was enough. you know?
Yeah. How we I loved how you said how we define failure for ourselves. That is
Yes,
critical because that can shape it in either direction. Because if
absolutely.
failure is just, if it's an okay thing, if it's just something that happens on the way to
Part of the
success,
process.
then
Yeah.
we're okay to fail. But
Yep.
if it's devastating,
Yes.
then we avoid situations that could potentially lead to failure, which is anything,
Yeah. Well, and the
any
more
risk
you
that we
move
take.
up, the higher the stakes go, right?
Exactly.
If you're a
Yeah.
manager, if you're a leader and you fail and you're from a culture that says that's bad, that's tricky in the system.
I was interviewing someone a while back, and we were talking about just the same idea of kind of imposter syndrome. But like you said, you talk to some of these women alumni from
Yeah.
the Women's Leadership Institute and saying, hey, can you do this? And they automatically say, well, no, I can't do that. And she was talking about how that, in her experience, she's found that more commonly among women than men.
Mm.
That men are like, well, sure, I can do that, and just this kind of
Yeah.
overconfidence almost. Do you see that? Do you see a difference in the way maybe women respond to these situations versus men?
Well, for almost a decade now, I've been interviewing women. So I would say my perspective is a little skewed. I think that everybody has imposter syndrome. However, I think that societally, especially in Utah, women have less of a chance to practice leadership
Yeah.
earlier with lower stakes than men do. So I think that has something to do with
Okay.
it. Yeah.
So it might just be a function of actual experience. And like you said, people that have had chances to succeed and fail over and over and over again might approach a challenge by saying, sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
But people who've had fewer opportunities to do that are going to be more hesitant. And you said, like in the Utah culture, sometimes women naturally have fewer of those opportunities.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we change that? What are we doing?
Oh, I always think you can change that.
I know, but I'm asking you how. Yeah.
I think the how is presence. Seeing people, giving specific compliments, making recognition genuine. I really love that you did that because you did this, this, and this. In fact, I've seen you do that multiple times. I'd like you to come to this and lead this group or try this thing or write this, summary. Not just recognize it, but then giving them opportunities to do it while you're there, right? Because we know statistically that people, anyone, men or women who have sponsors or mentors, they do better in their careers. They go faster, further. And so further, faster, I think that's one way is just bring people under your wing. You don't have to be like a CEO to bring someone under your wing and
Right.
say, I love, Dave, how you are actively listening to me. You listen to what I say, and then you incorporate it back into the question and the thoughts you have. And I know that you're listening to me. Like, that is an important skill. So just small things like that, I think we can do.
That's like next level leadership.
Yes,
I mean,
is.
and it's uncommon, I think.
Yeah.
I would be surprised to know that's happening on a regular basis. In fact, most of the time, is it? I mean, I'd love to know that it is.
I would think that it is happening more often than people think.
Good.
I think that there are pockets of really great corporations and organizations who are making this a reality. I also think we have a lot of confirmation bias and bias in general. People not claiming their voices, retribution, that kind of dampen that. But I do think good things are happening. And also in Utah, we're a culture of, aw shucks, thanks.
Right.
Right? So if I did something great, I might not even tell you about it. So it's not the story you're going to hear.
Right. Well, and I think that leaders, I think they have to have a certain amount of emotional balance to be able to make that statement as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that comes from a place of sincerity and genuineness, then I think that I've known. I mean, I've studied human behavior all of my adult life, and the people that I know that have the toughest time being emotionally intimate or paying compliments or things like that are people that are very insecure themselves. And it's almost like it's a zero-sum sort of thing. Like they can't, like if they compliment someone else and that takes away from the amount of compliments they might be able to get, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
It's not zero-sum. We can share as much love, as much admiration, as much respect as we want. Exactly. And it's all over the place. It's never ending.
Yeah.
But they see it that way sometimes. And so I think that's why it's critical for leaders to be in tune, with their own issues and managing their own stressors, and so that they can be, effective with their people that work for them.
Absolutely. And we also know that when leaders model behavior and capacity, then the people under them do better, right? But if you're just telling people that without consistency and frequency, then they're going to be like, why did you tell me that?
Right.
What do you want?
Yes.
Right? And if they say, yeah, we believe in timeout, you take personal time, but they never do, like that also is a cognitive dissonance that is hard.
Yeah. No, it has to start from the top. Absolutely. And it has to be like you said, it can't be like a periodic thing, check the box, pay one compliment this week, okay, phew, got that taken care of.
Because that will breed distrust.
Exactly. Yeah. It has to be a cultural shift, right? Where people where it becomes a culture of appreciation, that we appreciate one another here. And man, doesn't that raise everything? Doesn't everything just get better from there?
That is what I have seen, yes. And it's not just a culture of appreciation, it's a person who knows how to appreciate.
Yeah.
And then that rolls off, and that rolls off, and then that builds a culture.
And that has to start with the individual.
It starts, and you said from the top down. We're going to get here into Gen Z, and I have a few thoughts on that. But I did want to talk about, there's this quote from Simon Sinek, and he said, there are only two ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate it, or you can inspire it. And I want to talk about this a little bit as far as like management theories, right? So manipulate or inspire. In the 1800s, it was like scientific management. How big does a shovel need to be in order to most efficiently shovel the coal? We need a guy that's 5'6", that weighs this much, and the shovel has to be this tall, right? It's all about the product and how we're going to be efficient, not the person, because we're compensating them, and that's enough. Right. And then you switch to the early 1900s with something called the Hawthorne effect. Are you familiar with that?
The Hawthorne effect.
Okay, perfect. The
Hawthorne social psychology.
Yes. And they're like, okay, well, maybe, let's see if we can get these people to work faster on the assembly line if we turn the lights up. Right? Because we're affecting the environment. And in the end, it came out that it did impact their productivity, but not because of the lights. It's because there were leaders in the room.
They were being observed.
They were being observed, and they felt valued because they were being observed. So I feel like throughout time, there's always this push and pull between product, efficiency, performance, and like person, inspiration, hope, right? And I feel like as you look all throughout the 80s, the 90s, you can see that interplaying as trends in corporations. And my hope is that we're back to like a centric servant leadership model, But when you talked about change, it has been going on and I think that's the paradox, right? Is there is this push and pull through all generations.
Well, and we, as a species, we never find the middle. We go from one extreme to the other.
Well, we only find it for a moment, and then we're like, oh, how can we be more efficient?
As we're racing through it to get to the other side. Yeah. And so I would love to believe that we can eventually find the middle ground on something.
Yes.
But we spend a lot of time in extremes. And again, I'm totally down with let's find the middle. Yeah. But we struggle to do that for whatever reason. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. Let's talk about Gen Z. So this is a big deal because they're becoming, this is the workforce now.
Yeah.
Right. This is the workforce. We're done. The boomers are retired or retiring. And so how do we have to change things? Because Gen Z is a different animal.
Yeah. So I'm a mom and I have teenagers and I have a 10-year-old, right? So I have the workforce in my home coming up. And I teach at Weber, and the class I teach is their last class before they graduate. So who are they? What do they expect? What do they think the workforce is like? And I also am a mentor for women who succeed. So college-aged girls trying to figure out life around them and what's going on. And the things that I see are really interesting, and they have to do with information and power. Information, like a boomer's generation, there was an expert. There was a scarcity of information. So there was an expert and they held the power. For Gen Z and below, it's like information overload. We all have information. We are all experts in our credible lived experience. So sometimes in the workforce, those two get together and they feel disrespected for various reasons, right? The older generation feels like they don't respect me because they're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm here talking to you. And then the younger generation's like, but you didn't invite me into the conversation. I also have lived experience. So that's a really interesting combination as far as just the overload of information and how that is forming what we think of expert, right? Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on to
No, go ahead.
Power?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you put
I'm the one doing the interviewing, remember? Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Thank you for putting me in my place. So yeah, they interpret silence different, and then also authority. Because if they want to be invited in and they think that theirs is credible and they're scrolling through all these people who have claimed things, like my kids want to be a YouTube Mr. Beast. My 10-year-old is in Mr. Beast. He is the authority in my son's life, right?
Yes.
Well, the other day he said, I want to go to Beastland. And I was like, what? Because we were talking about spring break and what we're going to do. And I said, well, okay, where's Beastland? It's an amusement park in Saudi Arabia.
Oh. So let's go.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Authority for my 10-year-old. There you go. So it's very different than even the way that I came up in what authority looks like and what power looks like.
Right.
Because power is not concentrated at the top. They want it like relational, horizontal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a very different mindset and structure.
So is there going to be friction for a little while as because you'll have this younger generation, like you said, that perceives things differently that way. But the older generation are going to be the CEOs and CFOs and the decision makers.
Yes.
Right. And yeah, I wonder if there's always been friction there, but things have changed so much in the past 10 to 15 years.
I feel like it's,
that's true. It's different now. Right.
And you place AI on top of that.
Yeah.
And all of the information and organization that can come with that. And really, what does a hierarchy look like? What does a power structure look like? Yeah. When you involve all of those things. So it's just a really interesting conversation. Like I talked to a graduate, just recently graduated in technology. He commanded a high figure, but he took a lower paying job because he aligned with their values. And that
so
is
Gen Z.
That is something else that is huge, right?
Yes.
Like, do you walk the talk?
Yeah.
Even like, what are your political leanings? Do you get in the fray? Do you not get in the fray? Yeah. And I don't think that there is a right answer, but I do think that Gen Z is watching.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that, the way business is run, in order for it to be effective, is going to have to change a little bit. And we're going to have to kind of bring the mountain to Muhammad, so to speak, a little bit here, instead of just assuming, no, this is the way it's always been done. And you need to come
to adjust and adapt.
Adjust and be like us.
I don't think they're going to do that.
And hopefully there'll be just some adjustment and adaptation on both sides, right? That we'll kind of find this middle.
Absolutely.
That's the way it always happens. Yep. We're presented with these novel situations, and then we end up with a new normal. Yes. We end up, kind of figuring out, okay, well, this didn't exactly work, but this is going to work better.
Kind of the middle.
Yeah. And then we race to the other side as well. Yeah. No, I do think, but I love that perspective. And I think that business leaders would do well to kind of study what's happening with Gen Z. And again, just to better understand.
Well, and it's like the performance reviews, right?
Yeah.
Can people speak up in the performance reviews? If a Gen Z says, I don't really like this, but I think we could do this, this, or this, are you open to allowing them that?
Right.
Can you have a council of like your entry-level people and believe that their ideas are good? Can they bubble up, right? That really collaborative spirit, or are you just going to burn them out?
Right.
Because they are afraid and anxious and just want the job and the money and
This thinking outside the box is almost essential now.
It's almost essential.
Yeah,
Curiosity.
Yeah, that curiosity.
Mindset.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah. Well, this has been a lovely conversation, Patti. I really appreciate. I think you're an expert.
Oh,
But I'm not Gen Z, so I'm okay thinking people are experts too. But thank you for sharing your knowledge and understanding. It's just been lovely talking with you.
thank you so much. And thank you for your work in this space. It's important.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.